It was a shocking, psychological, probably so shocking for a child to... I remember I used to think about death as a distant thing, far away thing, until that incident happened to my father. And I started to think about death and look at it differently than before those years.
Omar's family sought refuge in the UK, where they'd often gone on vacation. And that's how Omar Deghayes came to study law at a British university. He says things began to change for him around that time. His family was secular, but he began to feel more interest in Islam. And after years of studying, Omar says he was restless.
I wanted a break, and I wanted to go somewhere. The other thing is I was longing for the heritage. As I say, I was more religious. I wasn't able to go back to Libya because we were still wanted in Libya. We were blacklisted, and we couldn't go and visit Libya, nor any other Arab country. Even I wanted to. So what remained was the Far East, which had the similar heritage, the longing, as I say, for all that. The mysterious Far East was even more mysterious than our Arab countries. India, Pakistan, Malaysia could be another adventure. All these reasons together were reasons to make me to go to Pakistan.
These decisions would later come to haunt Omar in the interrogation rooms of Bagram and Guantanamo. Omar says he liked the culture in Pakistan, he liked the food, he made friends. And when he went to Peshawar, he learned it wouldn't be hard to cross the border into Afghanistan. And he says that was interesting for another reason. The Taliban were in power then. They were implementing Sharia law. As a young lawyer trained in the UK, Omar says he was interested in seeing what was going on.
When I was there, I met my wife, Afghani wife, the first wife. And and then from there, I enjoyed the country the same as I enjoyed Pakistan, and I liked the people there. And through my new wife, I loved the whole country, as I said, and then got new relatives there.
But it was a big shift in lifestyle for you to go from, law school in the UK to enjoying life in Afghanistan under the Taliban. It was a rough country to live in at that time.
Yeah, well, I always had that personality where I liked to live on less luxurious things, and people seemed simpler. There was a big chance of doing lots of things. I've intended to set up a business there, intended to set up a legal firm there, and then probably mediate between Afghanistan and the West, because I understood both cultures. I had, at the time, studied Sharia, and I had knowledge of both laws, and I thought I could be a good force to change and develop things. And even...
What about the rules, though, that the Taliban had set for the country, not allowing girls to go to school? For a man raised in the UK, I can imagine that you'd be thinking, what's up with that?
Yeah, definitely. We tried to, when I was there, we tried to improve things that we thought weren't right. The Taliban weren't complete, but they had lots of good things, and they had, obviously, like any other organization, they had their shortcomings. They were boycotted by many countries. They had lots of problems. They didn't have the ability, didn't have the resources, no schools, no teachers. So they were planning to set up schools, but on their own time, and trying to get books, print books and things like that.
After the September 11th attacks, when American jets first started flying over Afghanistan, Omar took his wife and young son to Pakistan. It was there he was arrested, he believes, by people seeking bounty payments from the U.S. Now, Omar's not a British citizen, but he is a legal resident. He says in those early days, when he was still being moved from lockup to lockup in Pakistan, he was questioned by a British intelligence officer.
As soon as I realized who he was, I've pointed to him and I said, what you're doing is illegal. I'm being abducted against my will, without any charges of any sort, without any legal procedures, without any access to any law system or lawyers. And what you're doing now here in this place is illegal, and I'm going to take you to court if I go back to the UK. And I think he was frightened. He was a bit confused, and then he asked me, saying, what are you going to charge me with? And I was confused myself. I didn't have a clear idea what I was going to do. It was just something I was angry and frustrated.
At the time, Omar Deghayes was not able to talk his way out of the allegations that British and American intelligence officers had against him. He was transferred from Pakistan to Bagram and from there to Guantanamo Bay. You're listening to The Story. I'm Dick Gordon. Omar spent over 5 years in Guantanamo before he was eventually released. And it was while he was in that prison that he lost the use of one of his eyes.
This one occasion, I've refused to come out from the cell to cell search where it was some sexual abuse went on, because this is one of the things that went on in Guantanamo. So I refused to do that. So they went in, they expected me to say no. They went in and beat me up badly and then dragged me down to the floors and chained my hands behind my back. I think they wanted to make an example, and they want me to stop. They say stop resisting. Every time we ask you to come out, you must come out to our commands without any resistance. So they did this. One of them held my head, and the other guy put 2 fingers into my eyes, and he pushed in and in more harder into my eyes. I didn't realize what he was doing, so I had completely open eyes, and the other guy was holding my head, and the others were holding my body down to the floor, and his officer was standing, and he pushed 2 fingers into my eyes, and I felt the coldness of his fingers into my eyes. And then I realized what he was doing, so it was too late. I closed tightly my eyes. His fingers were already inside my eyes. And because I didn't want to scream, because I was in the corridors and there was cells, isolation cells, and I felt if I did scream, it would serve them, they would enjoy that, they would like it. And then the other thing is that there were other people who would be frightened to fight back. So I kept not screaming, and the officer was saying him to do more, to push his fingers even more inside my eyes, because he thought he wasn't pushing enough. So he pushed more into my eyes, and until he was saying, I was pushing. And then he stopped, and suddenly both my eyes had lots of water coming out from both of the eyes, liquid coming out from both of the eyes. I lost sight to both of the eyes. I was thrown back to the cell, isolation cell. For 3 days, I ate food and slept, did nothing, just prayed, ate food and slept. And I had pain in my eyes. I thought it would go away. I didn't see anything from them. And then suddenly, slowly, one of them regained its sight. But the right eye went from a worse condition to a worse condition. And now I can barely see much out of that eye.
And so would something like that just make you want to resist more? Because it seems like every time you resisted, they just made life more miserable for you.
Definitely so, but it came to a stage where we were so angry and frustrated with all the things that went on. They had, for 6 years, different programs of psychological harm and sexual stuff and all this. So we could see how the system worked, because being 6 years, most of them didn't stay as long as we did. All of the guards went for 1 year or less, 6 months, and then they were changed to other guards because they've lost, I think they lose the zeal after a time, and then they realize the mistakes, and so they kept changing them.
I wanted to ask you about that, because
we were permanent there, yeah.
When you talk about the kind of cruelty that you went through in Guantanamo Bay, I mean, one part of those stories that I think people have a hard time believing is that, were the guards themselves that evil, that cruel? Were they being told to do what they were doing? Were you ever able to just look at a guard and say, why are you treating me this way?
Yeah, definitely. We spoke with many of them, and they were like normal humans. They were like any other. You not imagine sometimes that they're the same people, the same nice person that we spoke with, and suddenly you turn into the person who comes into the cell to do those kind of acts. The beginning, they're different than when it ends. They come the first 6 months. They are full of zeal. They give them lessons, they say. They give them lots of lessons about who we are and how bad we are. And we are the people who've committed those atrocities, September 11. And we are really bad people, and we're terrorists. And so they come full of zeal to serve the country, to do harm to those who've committed September 11. And this is how they react differently in the beginning. And then slowly, the more they counter with prisoners, they become different. And they lose their thoughts, and they become more kinder and things like that. And as soon as that happens and they start to realize what's happening, then many people locked up in Guantanamo have never been to America, and they're nothing to do with September 11.
But in the 5 years that you were there, did you ever reach a guard? Did you ever have someone look at you and say, I'm sorry, this is not right?
Yeah, we had that a lot. We had lots of people saying that, and they would say to you that we don't want to be here, and we hate this place like you hate it. When I joined the army, I never thought I was going to be in Guantanamo Bay.